June 2020. A heavy atmosphere enveloped the forgotten Illinois Bayou forest, located on the outskirts of Russellville, Arkansas, a place rarely visited by anyone after sunset. The beam from a ranger's flashlight cut through the damp darkness that had accumulated over years, illuminating something no one was supposed to find. Center, I need assistance at Illinois Bayou and dispatch a coroner's team immediately. His voice echoed among the moss-covered ancient trees. What began as a routine check after heavy rain had now become something entirely different, something that could answer questions haunting the town of Russellville for 12 years. A portion of human remains was discovered shallowly buried under eroded soil, and right beside it was a small, rusted metal device, an old GPS tracker. The tracker that Emma Caldwell had never owned on the night she vanished in 2008. For over a decade, Emma's disappearance remained unanswered questions. A young woman, dedicated to her job and her infant child, suddenly vanished one fall evening after leaving work as she did every other day. A car left abandoned in Lake Dardanelle Park. A car door left slightly ajar. A phone losing signal at the very last moment. 2 empty seats quietly present at every family gathering. A bedroom whose door her mother never dared to fully close. Before we continue with this shocking story, please take a second to subscribe and like the video. Your support helps bring forgotten stories like this back into the light, and the algorithms will make sure you don't miss any future videos. The discovery at Illinois Bayou was not just a new clue in an old missing persons case. It was the first domino in a chain of events that would expose secrets buried for years in this small community. Because when authorities finally identified the suspect and made the arrest, it wasn't a drifter or an anonymous predator, it was someone the community knew. Someone they trusted. Someone who had lived among them for over a decade, carrying this horrifying secret. The Emma Caldwell case is not just a mystery solved, it is proof of a family's unrelenting persistence, investigators who refused to let the file gather dust, and advances in forensic science that finally gave a voice to a victim silenced for too long. It is also the story of a community torn apart. When Emma vanished in 2008, suspicion spread like wildfire. Neighbors eyed each other warily. Families once close grew distant. The search for Emma exposed cracks simmering beneath the calm surface of a small American town. Those cracks would burst open when the truth was finally revealed after 12 years. What makes this case particularly haunting is that the answer was never truly far away. The prime suspect was interviewed from the very beginning, but slipped through the cracks. For years, this person attended memorials, looked Emma's family straight in the eye, maintained an innocent facade while concealing unimaginable secrets. Where are you watching from today? Drop your location in the comments below. I'm always curious how far these stories reach and how they connect us across distances. Tonight, we'll go back to October 2008, retrace a search that stretched over a decade, and reveal the earth-shaking breakthrough that brought closure to one of Arkansas's most haunting cold missing persons cases. This is a story of loss, persistence, deception, and finally, justice delayed but never denied. In 2008, Russellville, Arkansas still held the peaceful charm of a small lakeside town along Lake Dardanelle, where tree-lined roads and a slow pace of life made any disruption stand out. In that setting, Emma Caldwell, 23 years old, lived with her 6-month-old daughter in a rented apartment near the town center. As a single mother, Emma maintained a fixed routine, working the afternoon shift at the Arkansas Nuclear One Visitor Center, finishing at 9 p.m., driving home along the same familiar route, then preparing everything for the next day for both mother and child. The most notable connection in Emma's personal life was Logan Reed, her ex-boyfriend and the child's father, who still occasionally appeared to visit, but whose relationship with Emma had grown tense after the breakup. Alongside that was Mara Quinn, Logan's new girlfriend, who had recently become distant and cold whenever Emma was around. On the last evening Emma was seen, she finished her shift as usual, left the building at 9:08 p.m., walked straight to her old sedan, parked in her usual spot. Outside cameras captured the moment she got in, closed the door, started the engine, and drove away. There was no sign of anything unusual in her movements or appearance at that time. However, the next morning, her normally stable routine was abruptly broken. Emma did not drop her daughter at daycare. did not show up for her shift, and did not answer any calls. Family checked the apartment and found everything exactly as it had been when Emma left the previous evening. No signs of packing or sudden departure. Emma's complete absence was completely inconsistent with her personality and her responsibility toward her child, causing her mother and brother to become immediately alarmed. They spent hours driving along the routes Emma usually took, asking neighbors, searching familiar areas, but all efforts hit dead ends. When independent searching could go no further, and time passed with no word from Emma, the family had no choice but to make the unavoidable decision. They went to the Russellville Police Department and officially filed a missing persons report for Emma Caldwell. Upon receiving the information, the Russellville Police Department opened a case classified as missing endangered adult, assigning it high priority due to Emma being a single mother and her disappearance completely contradicting her daily behavior. On-duty officers immediately began gathering background information from the family, focusing on Emma's fixed schedule, her usual route from the Arkansas Nuclear One Visitor Center to the apartment, familiar stops, and any minor recent changes in her habits. Emma's mother and brother helped sketch out places she might have stopped after work, including a small gas station on Highway 64, the turn into the familiar residential area, and the lakeside stretch of road Emma sometimes took to avoid rush hour. From the initial data, police formed a preliminary search team and deployed units along each plausible direction. One group swept the main road from the plant to town center, another checked the lakeside park area, often used for nighttime parking, and the remaining team coordinated with family to cover places Emma was known to frequent. By afternoon that day, a search unit patrolling the entrance to Lake Dardanelle State Park spotted a sedan matching Emma's description parked off to the side in a clearing near dense trees. A license plate check confirmed it was Emma Caldwell's vehicle. The parking spot did not align with her daily commute, and at the time of discovery, no one was near the car. Recognizing the anomaly, police immediately secured the area, ordering all personnel to preserve the scene for official examination. A temporary perimeter line was strung around a several-meter radius from the vehicle to restrict foot traffic and prevent disturbance of evidence. At that point, there was no clear indication of what had happened to Emma, but the car's presence in a location she had no reason to visit was the first evidence that the disappearance went beyond a simple delay. Police documented the parking position, lighting conditions, surrounding ground state, and prepared to bring the technical team to the scene for the next phase of analysis. Once the area around Emma's sedan was cordoned off, the crime scene technicians began a systematic examination, working from the exterior inward to the cabin to record the vehicle's full physical condition. The car was parked slightly off the natural lines in the dirt, as if deliberately maneuvered into place, but not aimed at a specific parking spot. The front pointed toward dense brush, the rear angled slightly toward a trail leading into the park. The driver's door was found slightly ajar, not fully closed, while the other three doors were securely shut, an inconsistency noted because it did not match the careful habits described by family. The keys were not in the ignition, but lay on the passenger side floor mat, about half a hand's length from their usual spot. Technicians photographed from multiple angles to preserve these details before opening the door with specialized gloves. The interior showed no major signs of disturbance. The driver's seat remained in a position suited to Emma's height. The seatbelt was not extended. The dashboard showed no prying marks. However, several key personal items, phone, wallet, employee ID, paperwork Emma carried from work, were found intact and not taken, scattered loosely around the back seat and front glove compartment. This was immediately noted in the report because it ruled out robbery while also being inconsistent with Emma voluntarily leaving the car to go somewhere. In the back seat, the child seat remained properly secured and buckled, a detail not groundbreaking but reflective of Emma's consistent habits, helping highlight the anomalies present in the cabin. After photographing the entire interior, the team began collecting trace evidence from the ground around the vehicle. The park's sandy loam soil preserved footprints quite well, allowing differentiation of multiple shoe sizes. A series of footprints led from the roadside toward the driver's door, their depth indicating relatively heavy weight. The direction of movement was from outside in, completely opposite to how someone would normally exit a vehicle. Another smaller set appeared on the sloped grass behind the car, but was not clear enough to determine gender or shoe type. Tire marks behind the vehicle matched the sedan's tread pattern. No signs of a second vehicle were found immediately adjacent, though the harder ground at the outer edge left open the possibility of another vehicle stopping without leaving traces. All impressions were numbered, photographed, and cast with plaster per standard procedure. When comparing these observations with Emma's normal behavior, investigators noted numerous mismatches. Emma habitually locked her car doors immediately after exiting, yet the driver's door was ajar, the keys were not in their usual place, wallet and phone were left behind, contrary to her habits, and the parking location had no reason tied to her routine. Additionally, no small or faint footprints possibly from Emma were found, even though the path from driver's door outward should have left prints under the lightly damp ground conditions at the time. All these recordings increased the likelihood that Emma did not leave the vehicle voluntarily or was not the one who actively parked it there. Based on the high degree of anomaly in and around the vehicle, the technical team concluded that the scene showed signs of external intervention and did not reflect the victim's normal behavior, providing grounds for investigators to move to deeper analysis of the surrounding context and possibilities related to Emma's disappearance. After completing documentation of the vehicle's condition and surrounding traces, investigators shifted to establishing Emma's movement timeline on the evening she vanished, starting with precisely confirming when she left work. Time records and confirmation from Arkansas Nuclear 1 Visitor Center Management showed Emma's shift ended at 9 p.m., and parking lot security cameras clearly captured 9:08 p.m. as she appeared in frame, walked to the sedan, and left the area. The video analysis team extracted the full sequence from 3 different cameras to check for anyone following Emma or any second vehicle appearing at the same time, but all footage showed her leaving the lot alone, with no vehicle tailing her. From this data, police established the first timeline marker. Emma left work at 9:08 p.m., heading towards central Russellville. Next, the team gathered video from key intersection cameras along Emma's usual route, including the junction near Highway 64, the turn into the frequently trafficked residential area, and a 24-hour gas station camera. One roadside camera captured an image of a sedan, matching Emma's at 9:19 p.m., traveling northeast, not toward her apartment, but veering toward the park and lakeside area. Based on maps and average speed, the vehicle appeared near Lake Dardanelle State Park between 9:25 and 9:30 p.m., consistent with unofficial witness reports of hearing an engine in that area. When cross-referencing the company parking lot camera timeline with the roadside camera capturing Emma's car, police noted a gap of over 10 minutes, with no images or evidence showing the sedan passing along the usual route. This gap was not excessively long, but sufficient to raise questions about whether Emma had deviated from her familiar path or stopped somewhere outside camera range. To clarify this journey, investigators collected statements from residents near the park and individuals present in the area that evening. Residents near the park entrance said vehicles came and went at night, but none specifically recalled this sedan. However, a man living near the turn reported hearing a vehicle drive slowly into the park area, shortly after 9:20 p.m., with no sound of it leaving afterward. A woman walking her dog nearby said she saw headlights pointing toward the clearing where Emma's car was later found, but she couldn't see who was inside due to trees blocking the light. These statements were recorded and cross-checked with camera timelines, reinforcing that the sedan appeared at the park within the time frame matching video data. When piecing together all gathered information, investigators clearly determined that Emma left work on time, but her journey after leaving the secure area deviated from her usual route and ended at the park in a time frame inexplicable by her personal habits. This blank period became a critical point in reconstructing the events of that evening, while raising questions about whether Emma changed her route under external influence or due to the presence of another individual before the vehicle appeared at the discovered location. After establishing Emma's movement timeline based on cameras and witness statements, investigators moved to analyze mobile device data to determine her last digital activity before disappearing. Carrier records showed that on the day of the incident, Emma made no calls after finishing her shift, and her last messages were sent earlier in the afternoon. The entire activity logged from after 8 p.m. until the phone went off showed no anomalies, no strange calls or messages suggesting she planned to meet anyone. Emma's complete lack of phone use after leaving work was noted as unusual, as family said she always stayed in touch, especially with a young child requiring quick response in emergencies. When retrieving the signal loss timestamp, technicians determined Emma's phone disconnected from the network around 9:32 p.m., just minutes after the roadside camera captured the sedan heading toward the park, indicating the device remained powered on throughout her departure from work and travel through major intersections. The nearest cell tower recording the final signal was located northeast of Russellville, covering the lakeside area and most of the park, meaning at the final moment before going offline, Emma's phone was in a fairly wide but still limited zone around Lake Dardanelle State Park. Although 2008 tower coverage accuracy was relatively low, the technical team was still able to narrow the phone's location to a radius of a few kilometers, consistent with the vehicle's found position. Cross-referencing the signal loss time with Emma's appearance at the park showed no indication she left the area before the phone stopped functioning. Another key factor noted, the shutdown was not due to battery depletion, as data transmitted to the tower indicated a sudden power-off state, typically seen when the device is manually turned off or the battery is abruptly removed. This was considered abnormal because Emma habitually charged her phone regularly and rarely powered it down. Combined with the phone being left in the car, the likelihood of Emma voluntarily shutting it off and then leaving was very low. By aligning all carrier data with the travel timeline, investigators concluded that Emma's phone remained in normal operation when she left work and continued moving in a direction inconsistent with her personal habits. The device going offline just minutes after the car appeared near the park, along with it being left at the scene, largely ruled out theories of Emma voluntarily abandoning her life or leaving the area without a trace. Instead, the cell tower data reinforced that Emma did not actively control her journey after leaving the last camera-captured area, and that the disappearance occurred within a very narrow radius around the park, at a time when Emma was still within coverage, but no longer able to use her mobile device. Immediately after cell tower data confirmed that Emma's phone lost signal within the park and lakeside area, the investigative team decided to expand the search scale to thoroughly sweep all areas potentially related to the victim's final movements. Local SAR teams were mobilized, coordinating with Pope County rescue forces to deploy ground search plans in multiple directions. First, they divided the Lake Dardanelle State Park map into search grids, focusing on trails, clearings, and areas accessible by motor vehicle. Search teams conducted sweeps in both horizontal and vertical patterns to look for any signs of movement or soil disturbance from the evening of the incident. In parallel, a K-9 team specialized in locating missing persons was brought in from Little Rock. The dogs were taken to the location where Emma's vehicle was found, allowed to scent from the driver's compartment, and then led in directions where Emma or another individual might have passed. The first area the K-9s showed interest in was the trail leading deep into the Illinois Bayou woods, a popular path for fishermen and joggers, but less frequented at the end of October due to high humidity and low light. The K-9s detected a faint scent trail extending about several dozen meters from the vehicle position, but the scent quickly dissipated in an area where the ground was mixed with animal odors and standing water, forcing the search team to expand to other directions. Meanwhile, another SAR group approached the lakeside area, where the slope was gentle and the ground mixed with mud. They checked for slip marks, footprints, broken branches, or discarded items, paying particular attention to points where someone might have slipped into the water. However, this area showed no clear signs of disturbance, except for a few sunken soil streaks that were insufficient to prove anyone had stood there on the night of the incident. Recognizing that the dense forest terrain interspersed with small trails could create large blind spots, the search commander requested Arkansas State Police helicopters to scan from above. The aircraft was equipped with infrared cameras to detect human body shapes, heat signatures, or areas with abnormal temperature changes. However, since several hours had passed since Emma's disappearance, the equipment detected no valuable heat signals. Nevertheless, the aerial perspective helped the SAR team identify several faint paths not on official maps, likely used by locals as shortcuts through the woods. These points were marked for immediate ground follow-up. During the sweep, search forces collected various scattered objects, such as bottle caps, plastic bags, scraps of old clothing fabric, and broken sticks. All were taken for preliminary examination and quickly ruled out as unrelated due to mismatched timing or lack of connection to Emma. A small dark piece of fabric, found stuck on a bush about 35 meters from the vehicle, drew the investigative team's attention, but after on-site material analysis based on visual experience, SAR members concluded it was most likely part of previously torn athletic clothing left by hikers. All collected items were tagged and removed from the list of leads after no direct connection was found. When compiling data from ground, trails, lakeside, and aerial searches, the command team identified two high-potential areas for prioritized focus. First, the trail segment extending into the Illinois Bayou woods, where the K-9s briefly picked up a scent before losing it. And second, the transition zone between a clearing and dense forest on the west side of the park, where the helicopter detected an unnatural-looking faint path that was not clearly animal-made. These two areas were selected because both fell within the cell tower coverage radius at the time. Emma lost contact and aligned with the vehicle's direction of travel, per camera data. The decision to concentrate resources on these 2 points marked the shift from broad area search to focus search, aimed at determining whether the area contained any additional signs related to Emma's final movements. With the focus search perimeter narrowed but no clear results yet, the investigative team shifted to strengthening human intelligence, particularly individuals with direct connections to Emma in the period leading up to her disappearance. The first person scrutinized was Logan Reed, Emma's ex-boyfriend and father of her daughter, due to the potential motive stemming from their personal relationship. Logan was summoned to the Russellville Police Department and asked to account for his whereabouts on the evening Emma vanished. Logan stated that he returned home around 8:30 p.m. that night, stayed home for the remainder of the evening, watched television, and went to bed early. When asked if he had contacted Emma, Logan denied it and said they had recently limited contact to avoid arguments over child care. The investigative team verified Logan's statement by checking credit card transactions that day, cell tower data from his phone, and personal vehicle usage times. A credit card transaction at 8:12 p.m. at a convenience store matched Logan's account, but no further transactions after that time proved he remained home or left. Cell tower data confirmed Logan's phone connected to a tower near his home between 8:39 p.m., but after 9 p.m., the mobile signal showed no significant movement, which could mean he stayed home, but could also indicate the device was left at home while the owner traveled by vehicle. Since Logan drove an older pickup truck without tracking equipment, police could not precisely verify the vehicle's location during the window of Emma's disappearance. When analyzing the possibility of Logan traveling between 9:10 and 9:30 p.m., investigators concluded that in theory, Logan had sufficient time to leave home, only a little over 10 minutes drive from the park, and reach the area where Emma's vehicle was found. However, since cell tower data did not prove Logan's phone left his home coverage area, this remained only a possibility and could not be considered incriminating evidence. Police expanded analysis to the personal relationship between Logan and Emma. Internal records showed disagreements over child visitation schedules, sometimes heated arguments, but no history of violence. Emma's family acknowledged the relationship was not smooth, but did not cite any specific incidents, suggesting Logan had threatened or exhibited dangerous behavior. Nevertheless, Logan's potential emotional motive or child custody dispute remained listed as a factor to consider. After Logan, the investigative team took a statement from Mara Quinn, Logan's new girlfriend, who occasionally participated in exchanges related to Emma's child. Mara provided a clearer timeline. She said she went out to dinner with a friend that evening and left Logan's home before 7:30 p.m., stating she did not see Logan after that time. When asked about her relationship with Emma, Mara replied there was no direct conflict between them, though there were a few awkward situations due to differing views. When cross-checking Mara's statement, police obtained confirmation from the friend she was with. The friend confirmed Mara left the restaurant at the stated time, but could not verify where Mara went afterward. Mara's phone data showed her device remained stationary in the central Russellville area until nearly 10 p.m. that evening, meaning it did not overlap in time or location with Emma. Nevertheless, similar to Logan's case, a phone remaining in a fixed location did not rule out the possibility that the owner was elsewhere. When synthesizing all factors from statements, technical data, personal behavior, and the relationship of both individuals, the investigative team reached a preliminary conclusion that both Logan and Mara had elements that could not be absolutely confirmed, but also lacked specific evidence showing their direct involvement in Emma's disappearance. Therefore, both remained on the list of persons of interest for continued monitoring, but at this point, police lacked sufficient grounds to designate either as an official suspect. When the verification of Logan and Mara's alibis yielded no clear breakthrough, the investigative team decided to focus on another detail that appeared in the compiled file: an anonymous 911 call made 2 days before Emma's disappearance, in which the caller accused Emma of involvement in drug trafficking near her workplace. The investigative team requested the dispatch center to provide the recording, timing, and technical parameters of the call. The recording showed the call lasted less than 1 minute. The caller was male, spoke calmly with no distinctive background noise to identify the surrounding environment, and most importantly, the call originated from an unregistered prepaid phone number. The department's technical unit attempted to trace the call's location, but results showed the anonymous SIM device was only active briefly and connected through a high-traffic tower, making precise location determination nearly impossible. This reinforced the likelihood that the caller deliberately concealed their identity. When analyzing the accusation's content, investigators noted that the claims against Emma lacked concrete details, merely repeating that a young woman matching Emma's description was involved in transactions. There was no description of vehicles, associates, or specific times. The investigative team cross-referenced this accusation with Emma's work schedule to check for coincidental overlap, but results showed that at the time mentioned by the caller, Emma was in a camera-monitored area at her workplace with no suspicious activity. Additionally, Emma had no history related to using or dealing prohibited substances, and her family affirmed she always avoided risky environments. All these factors made the accusation appear not intended as a genuine warning, but rather an effort to create a negative impression of Emma. In the absence of a clear motive for making a false report, investigators questioned the caller's purpose. Why deliberately insert Emma's name into a 911 call so close to the time she disappeared? When viewed alongside the personal relationship between Emma and Logan, as well as Mara's recent appearance, the investigative team did not make official speculation, but noted the possibility that the call was intended to lay groundwork for a deliberate scenario. If verified as true, an accusation aimed at discrediting Emma could affect her custody rights and legal standing in family disputes. The 911 call was therefore added to the list of high suspicion data points. When comparing its timing to the progression of Emma's disappearance, the investigative team concluded that this was not a random factor, but more likely a purposeful staged action carried out by someone familiar with Emma's schedule and personal circumstances. Although no direct evidence identified the caller, the timing coincidence and content nature were sufficient for the investigative team to place this situation within the scope requiring thorough examination, as it could be directly related to Emma's disappearance, or at least reflect an intentional effort to influence her image immediately before she was last seen. After completing the analysis of the anonymous 911 call and incorporating this factor into the high suspicion data group, the investigative team returned to reviewing all evidence, statements, and timelines collected to determine if any intersections could open new directions. However, the cross-referencing process showed that all available data remained at the hypothesis stage without converting into specific evidence. The scene around the sedan showed no signs of struggle or foreign DNA. Collected shoe prints were not clear enough to identify. The movement timeline only confirmed the vehicle's route to the park, but did not clarify who was driving, while Emma's phone data only provided the final connection timestamp without revealing interaction content during her disappearance window. On the human side, statements from Logan and Mara Both had uncertain points, but no contradictions severe enough to constitute incriminating evidence. Logan's cell tower data showed his phone near home during the critical window, while Mara's data placed her in the city center area, meaning no factor proved either was near the scene at the time the vehicle appeared in the park. Even the 911 call, though suspicious, provided no direct clue to trace the perpetrator due to the use of a prepaid SIM and connection in a high-device area, causing all tracing efforts to reach dead ends. When the investigative team synthesized all elements regarding the scene, timeline, and technical data, the overall conclusion was that the case lacked clear evidence to confirm Emma as the victim of criminal activity, particularly since no body or any signs of injury were found to allow official classification as a homicide. The absence of direct witnesses, tangible physical evidence, and breakthrough-capable technical data caused the investigation to gradually slow. By early 2009, after months of repeatedly reviewing the same dataset without new leads emerging, the Russellville Police Department decided to transfer the entire file on Emma Caldwell's disappearance to the cold case unit. The file was closed with the status cause of disappearance undetermined, and although retained for reopening if new data arose, active official investigation was temporarily suspended, leaving an unresolved gap in Emma's disappearance. In 2020, when the Russellville Police Department launched a program to re-examine unsolved missing persons cases over a decade old, the case involving Emma Caldwell was placed on the priority list due to the unusual nature of the scene and unresolved gaps in the 2008 investigation process. The Cold Case Unit assigned the file to Detective Rowan Price, an investigator with extensive experience handling cases heavily reliant on forensic analysis and technical data reconstruction. Upon receiving the file, Price spent time reading all old reports in chronological order to grasp the overall progression from the initial missing person report to case closure. Crime scene photos, evidence catalogs, and technical analysis reports from that time were reassembled to evaluate which aspects had been limited by 2008-era technology or procedures. During this review, Price paid particular attention to a detail previously noted but not deeply processed: a small metallic object attached under the chassis of Emma's vehicle during the initial technical examination of the vehicle. The 2008 documentation described the object as an unidentified function device, no signs of hazard, and because it showed no clear active signal, it was classified as unrelated. However, with current experience, Price recognized the device's description closely matched older GPS trackers freely sold from the mid-2000s, compact, low signal, and difficult to detect without thorough inspection. The coincidence between the rise in tracker technology popularity and the device's location prompted Price to flag it as evidence requiring reanalysis under modern forensic standards, especially since a tracker could contain a serial number or overlook technical data from the prior period. In addition, Price reviewed all remaining evidence: shoe prints collected near the vehicle, photos of disturbed ground, personal items inside the car, Emma's phone records, and the 911 call recording. Each evidence group was reclassified by modern criteria: re-examinable, reconstructible, no remaining physical value, and contextual support only. Items such as shoe prints and tire marks were placed in the reanalyzable with modern simulation software group, especially given that 2020 offered advanced digital imaging tools for enhancing clarity or reconstructing patterns to compare with commercial products. Emma's phone records were also re-evaluated because 2020 cell tower mapping technology offered higher accuracy and expanded capabilities, allowing reconstruction of device positions based on original carrier-stored data. A key next step for Price was compiling a list of evidence for re-examination at the Pope County Forensic Lab, including the suspected GPS tracker metallic device, shoe print photos, objects collected at the vehicle scene, and all original technical data related to Emma's mobile device. All were prioritized based on potential to open new investigative directions, with the GPS tracker at the top, due to its unique nature. If it truly was a tracking device, the purchaser or installer could be directly linked to Emma's disappearance. Alongside compiling the re-examination list, Price restructured the entire case under a modern investigative framework. Instead of relying solely on chronological event sequence, as in the old file, Price grouped the case by clusters of factors: Emma's journey, mobile device activity, behavior of involved persons, mechanical evidence at the scene, and unprocessed technical data. This restructuring helped clearly identify missing data segments and potential intersection points, leading to new conclusions. At the same time, Price established 3 core objectives for the reinvestigation phase: determine whether Emma drove the vehicle to the park herself, authenticate the role of the metallic device, and reassess the behavior of previously involved individuals, especially Logan Reed and Mara Quinn, to examine overlooked or previously unviable factors from 2008. Although no new leads had been confirmed at the time of case reopening, incorporating the case into the 2020 forensic process allowed Price to recognize that evidence once deemed unrelated under old technology could become crucial keys when viewed in new light. Rearranging the entire file under this system was the first step toward restarting the investigation, laying the foundation for deeper analysis of each element in the 12-year-old disappearance case. Not long after Detective Rowan Price completed the review and reclassification of all existing evidence from 2008, a new report from the Arkansas Department of Forestry was unexpectedly sent to the cold case unit. After 2 days of heavy rain, a hunter discovered a portion of human bone protruding on the sloping hillside of the Illinois Bayou forest, only a few kilometers from the park area where Emma's vehicle was found nearly 12 years earlier. Recognizing the high degree of geographic match, Price immediately arrived at the scene with the forensic team and local patrol forces. The discovery area was on a heavily eroded slope where the topsoil had slid away, exposing a pale bone segment wedged between tree roots and loose rock debris. The excavation team established a secure perimeter, marked the exposure point, and then used hand tools to carefully expand the area around the initial find to avoid damaging any remaining structures beneath the ground. Gradually, additional bone fragments emerged, including the skull, ribs, and a portion of the spine, all in a state of natural decomposition but sufficiently intact for identification. Small fragments of fabric fibers and synthetic material, interspersed in the soil layers, drew particular attention from the forensic team, as this forested area saw little human traffic and rarely contained modern waste debris. Once sampling was complete, the bones were sealed and transported to the forensic lab for identification, using Emma Caldwell's dental records. Results came quickly. The tooth structure and anatomical features matched the archived data completely, confirming that the remains discovered were Emma's, ending 12 years of missing person status, but simultaneously opening a previously unidentified crime scene. Immediately after identity confirmation, Price directed a full sweep of the expanded area around the excavation site to collect any additional evidence that might have been buried or exposed by the rain. The expanded search was conducted in concentric circles, moving outward from the bone discovery point to a radius of about 30 meters. During the sweep, the forensic team discovered 3 significant objects scattered on the rain-washed ground: a small metallic device matching the shape of the GPS tracker described in the 2008 file, a dark torn piece of fabric, mud-stained and decayed over time, and a small crumpled piece of paper with faint ink marks, still discernible enough to identify it as the remnant of a once-folded note. The items were sequentially numbered, photographed in place, then collected in specialized evidence bags for detailed analysis. Notably, the GPS tracker was found less than 2 meters from the skull location, buried under freshly turned soil, consistent with the possibility that the device was buried at the same time or within the same area where the body was initially concealed. The dark fabric exhibited fiber characteristics not typical of hiking or outdoor clothing, and the fiber decay indicated prolonged exposure to a moist environment, matching the time frame of Emma's disappearance. The paper fragment was located near a large tree root, several meters from the excavation area, likely displaced by wind or water flow from its original position. Although the writing on it was blurred, the presence of a paper fragment with ink prompted Price to prioritize its analysis to determine origin and purpose. After collecting all evidence and conducting a preliminary scene assessment, the investigative team concluded that the body recovery location was not a site regularly visited by locals or tourists. The steep terrain, dense vegetation, and distance from trails indicated that Emma's body had been deliberately buried or hidden, not the result of a natural accident or getting lost. The discovery of the remains, along with signs of burial and the appearance of evidence potentially related to tracking behavior, led Price to officially reclassify the case from missing person to homicide. Emma Caldwell's file was reopened with a new classification code, and all current scene data was integrated into the analysis system for cross-referencing with old evidence, laying the groundwork for the next phase of investigation based on findings brought to light after 12 years buried in the Illinois Bayou forest. Immediately after the remains discovery area was cleared and all new evidence transferred to the forensic lab, Detective Rowan Price ordered a detailed re-examination of each sample according to current forensic standards, starting with the GPS tracker found near Emma's body. The device had corroded after more than a decade of exposure to soil, water, and temperature fluctuations, but the metal casing remained sufficiently intact for the technical team to remove oxidation layers and reveal a serial number etched deep on the inner surface. Under UV light and specialized camera scanning, the faint digits became clear enough for identification. Price contacted the device manufacturer, a small company that sold older model trackers between 2006 and 2009, and requested a match against their archived database. The trace took a few hours, but the response was definitive. The device was sold through a dealer in Little Rock in September 2008, with transaction records showing the purchaser as Logan Reed. Based on this information, Price requested the dealer provide additional receipts and any supporting documents. Copies of the invoice showed cash payment, but the recipient's signature was sufficient to confirm Logan had personally purchased the device just weeks before Emma disappeared. After completing the GPS analysis, the forensic team moved to examining the dark fabric fragment recovered from the scene. The fabric sample was subjected to FTIR spectroscopy to analyze fiber chemical structure and determine fabric type and intended use. Results showed the fabric was not typical athletic wear, but cross-woven polyester fibers, commonly used in workwear or dark wind-resistant jackets, sold in industrial men's clothing stores around 2008. Cross-referencing the fabric sample with commercial textile databases, the technical team identified it as part of a men's jacket line sold at a store near Russellville, aligning with the period when Logan lived and shopped in the area. While the fibers alone were insufficient to directly identify who wore the garment, its presence with Emma's remains in an area with no natural reason for it to exist marked the fabric as evidence potentially linking to the person who buried or handled the body. Meanwhile, the crumpled paper fragment was processed using water-damage document recovery techniques. The forensic team employed multispectral lighting to reveal remaining ink traces. Although most content was lost, distinctive curved and hook strokes of handwriting emerged. Price forwarded the paper sample to the state's handwriting analysis expert for comparison with handwriting samples from individuals interviewed in 2008. Within a short time, the report indicated that the handwriting characteristics on the fragment strongly matched those of Mara Quinn, including the curved form of initial letters, the slant of vertical strokes, and unusual pen pressure at word endings. Although the text on the paper was no longer fully legible, the handwriting similarity, combined with the paper's discovery location and the GPS evidence tied to Logan, created a clear connection between individuals previously associated with Emma and the body disposal site. After synthesizing the forensic results from the GPS tracker, fabric fibers, and note fragment, Price rebuilt the suspect profile based on physical evidence rather than prior statements or inferences. Three key elements stood out. Logan purchased the GPS tracker just weeks before Emma's disappearance. The fabric type matched work-oriented men's clothing, consistent with Logan's style at the time, and the handwriting on the note fragment originated from Mara. From this evidence, Price concluded that Emma had not only been tracked prior to her disappearance, but was likely approached or directly monitored by someone she knew, with subsequent body disposal showing signs of execution by one or more individuals closely connected to her at the time of the 2008 incident. After the physical evidence was re-examined and established clear links to Logan Reed and Mara Quinn, Detective Rowan Price shifted focus to technical data, an area that had advanced dramatically since 2008. Although Emma's phone was powered off just before her disappearance and remained inactive for 12 years, carrier archives retained original system log copies of the data. Price requested the State Technical Division retrieve all data related to the device in the final 24 hours before disappearance, including tower connection logs, power on-off timestamps, routing data, and minor pings often unused in the original investigation. With 2020 technology, experts could reconstruct the phone's path by combining continuous tower connections, creating a minute-by-minute movement map. Analysis showed Emma's phone left the coverage area of the tower near her workplace around 9:10 p.m., quickly entered the overlap zone of two northeastern town towers, then moved to the park-adjacent area, matching the time frame when cameras recorded Emma's vehicle on the road. From 9:20 to 9:30 p.m., the device remained stable within the coverage of three towers surrounding Lake Dardanelle State Park, proving the phone, and logically, Emma or whoever was driving, had been in the area before the signal abruptly ended at 9:32 p.m. Once the device's final journey was fully reconstructed, Price ordered expanded analysis of two other devices, Logan's and Mara's phones, both of which had connection data archived by carriers, despite the original devices no longer being in possession from 2008. This comparison aimed to determine whether either individual appeared in Emma's movement area. First, Logan's device 2008 data was too coarse for detailed use, but when processed through 2020 cell mapping systems, signal logs showed Logan's phone connected to a tower near his home around 9 p.m., consistent with his statement. However, at 9:18 p.m., the signal shifted to a tower nearly 3 kilometers north of his home, a direction outside his claimed normal evening travel range. This ping lasted only about 2 minutes before the device returned to central Russellville coverage, but it indicated Logan's phone had not remained stationary at home, as previously described. Although a single ping could not conclusively prove Logan left home at the exact time of Emma's disappearance, the relative coincidence between Logan's ping shift and Emma's vehicle appearance on camera marked this data as notable in the initial movement model. Shifting to Mara's data, Price expected clearer results given her statement of remaining in the city center all evening. However, 2020 cell mapping revealed a different pattern from 8:50 p.m. to 9:05 p.m. Mara's device stayed in central Russellville, but from 9:06 p.m. to 9:14 p.m., a short series of connections appeared with a tower in the eastern town area, not far from Logan's residence. The signal then returned to the city center as normal. This ping sequence was relatively weak, but significant because it occurred precisely during the window when Emma left work and traveled an unusual route. When overlaying the three cell maps, Emma's, Logan's, and Mara's, Price identified two notable intersection points. First, the timing of Emma's phone entering the park area closely aligned with Logan's phone leaving his home coverage. Second, Mara's phone appeared in an area potentially linked to Logan's location during the same time frame. Although the devices did not remain on the same tower long enough for absolute matches, the ping patterns showed Logan and Mara's movements that evening did not align with their statements, and crucially, their movements coincided with Emma's final journey. Combining the cell mapping data with physical evidence from the scene, GPS tracker serial tied to Logan, fabric consistent with men's work clothing, and note fragment bearing Mara's handwriting, Price determined that the movements of both individuals exceeded random chance, placing them in the group of subjects potentially present in the area where Emma disappeared at the critical time. After finalizing the analysis of evidence and cell mapping data, Detective Rowan Price decided to recall Logan Reed for direct confrontation with the new findings, particularly the physical evidence inexplicable by his prior statements. The session was conducted in an interview room at the Russellville Police Department, where Price began by detailing the GPS tracker found near Emma's remains. Contrary to his calm demeanor in 2008 interviews, Logan became visibly tense as soon as Price presented the information that the device's serial had been recovered, and matched a purchase transaction in his name at a Little Rock dealer, weeks before Emma disappeared. Logan initially attempted to explain that he had bought a similar device to explore technology, but never used it. However, Price immediately demanded an explanation for why that device appeared at Emma's burial site. an area Logan had claimed in 2008 he never visited. Logan offered no plausible explanation, and his flustered response prompted Price to move to the second piece of evidence, cell tower mapping data. Price visually presented the ping timestamps from Logan's phone on the evening Emma vanished, pointing out that the device had not remained at home, as previously stated, but connected to a tower nearly 3 kilometers north of his residence, right as Emma left work and headed toward the park. When asked to explain why his phone left the home area at that critical time, Logan denied leaving and suggested possible signal interference or automatic tower switching, but Price countered by displaying the continuous coverage ping model, showing the tower transition could only occur if the device physically moved. Pressed further, Logan shifted to claiming someone else might have taken his phone without his knowledge, but Price highlighted the implausibility of that scenario absent any evidence of others entering or leaving Logan's home during that window. Continuing the confrontation, Price verified the GPS purchase origin. Dealer records from Little Rock showed Logan not only paid cash but also signed for receipt, eliminating possibilities of mistaken purchase, not knowing what the device was for, or unrelated transaction, as Logan attempted to claim. With direct physical evidence, the GPS tracker attached to Emma's vehicle and later found near her body, Logan's denials held no weight. When Price posed the central question, if you weren't tracking Emma, why was the device you purchased found at the location of her body? Logan shifted from defensiveness to prolonged silence, a common indicator when a subject realizes no defense holds. After several minutes, Logan resumed answering in a quieter, less confident voice, admitting he had once installed the device on Emma's vehicle to know where she went regarding child care, but he did not admit involvement in her disappearance. However, this shift directly contradicted his 2008 statement when he insisted he never tracked Emma and never approached her vehicle after the breakup. Logan's sudden change in account was a major signal to investigators he had withheld critical information from the beginning and only partially admitted truth when unable to continue denying evidence. Combined with cell mapping showing Logan in an overlapping area with Emma's vehicle appearance, Price concluded that Logan's alibi of being home all evening was officially broken. Logan no longer remained in the person of interest category, but was moved to the primary suspect list, with factors including purchasing and using a GPS tracker to monitor Emma's presence near her disappearance area at the key time, and dishonest statements throughout the initial investigation. Logan was required to remain under law enforcement supervision while his file underwent deeper analysis, marking a major turning point in the investigation as the case focus began centering on him as a pivotal figure in Emma Caldwell's disappearance. After Logan Reed was identified as the primary suspect based on irrefutable forensic and cell mapping evidence, Detective Rowan Price shifted focus to the second individual closely tied to Logan at the time of Emma's disappearance, Mara Quinn. Physical evidence from the new scene, the note fragment matching Mara's handwriting, and the dark fiber near the body, prompted Price to reevaluate her entire role, particularly the possibility that Mara was more deeply involved than recorded in the 2008 file. First, Price obtained a legal search warrant for Mara's old electronic devices, including a 2007 laptop stored in her family's possession. The state's digital forensics unit recovered data from the mechanical hard drive using restoration algorithms capable of retrieving files deleted years earlier. During recovery, technicians discovered numerous search queries related to personal tracking, vehicle location, identifying GPS devices attached to cars, and content about fabricating anonymous reports, topics strangely aligned with elements in Emma's case. Notably, many searches occurred in September and October 2008, precisely when Logan purchased the GPS tracker and Emma disappeared. In parallel with electronic device analysis, Price expanded searches for Mara's purchase records from that period. A series of receipts from a clothing store near Russellville showed Mara had purchased a dark-colored jacket made of cross-woven polyester, the same fiber type found near Emma's remains. Additionally, a receipt from a Little Rock cosmetics store revealed she bought a heavy foundation shade rarely used for Mara's skin tone, raising suspicion that the product may have been used for disguise or to assist someone else in altering appearance in low light. When cross-referenced with scene fiber samples, the forensic lab confirmed a probable match between the jacket material Mara purchased and the fabric found, though not absolute, sufficient to place her clothing in the high-priority suspicion range. To complete the picture of behavior on the night of disappearance, Price ordered re-evaluation of the anonymous 911 call, accusing Emma. Carrier data from the burner phone was analyzed using modern cell coverage mapping, pinpointing the probable connection area for its single use. Data indicated the call originated within a small radius near the apartment complex Mara rented at the time, and during that same window, Mara's 2008 phone ping appeared in a similar area, though not an exact match. This did not prove Mara made the call directly, but the high probability made the hypothesis of her participating in a plan to create a damaging profile for Emma more plausible. The final piece in the analysis chain was handwriting verification. The returned handwriting analysis report stated that the note fragment near the body exhibited distinctive pen characteristics, approximately 15-degree rightward slant, emphasized pressure on initial characters, unusually long hooks on E, and with over 90% similarity to Mara's archived handwriting samples. The expert concluded a high likelihood that the note was written by Mara or someone imitating her writing, but the imitation scenario was deemed unlikely since Mara's handwriting samples were not public. When Price synthesized all forensic, digital, and purchase record data, a behavioral pattern emerged. Logan directly tracked Emma via GPS, but many preparatory elements, purchasing mismatched cosmetics, searches on personal tracking, possible use of a burner phone for the 911 call, buying a jacket matching scene fabric, were linked to Mara. She not only appeared around Logan during the critical period, but left physical traces near Emma's body, indicating active rather than passive involvement. With this evidence, Price placed Mara in the category of potential orchestrator, someone who may have instigated, assisted, or even coordinated Logan's actions, opening an entirely new investigative direction into her motive, role, and level of participation in the disappearance that led to Emma Caldwell's death. After being confronted with an irrefutable series of forensic evidence and realizing that Mara Quinn was becoming the focus of the investigation, Logan Reed proactively requested a meeting with Detective Rowan Price to cooperate under conditions, hoping for consideration of a reduced sentence in exchange for a full account of the events in the 2008 case. In the formal interrogation session, Logan began describing the entire plan in chronological order, admitting that the tracking of Emma was not impulsive but had been prepared weeks in advance. According to Logan, after personal tensions escalated over shared child custody, he felt Emma was not honest about her relationships and believed she was trying to create increasing distance. Mara, who at the time frequently displayed irritation whenever Emma appeared, encouraged Logan to take control of the situation and repeatedly suggested that Emma might be trying to create disadvantages in the custody dispute. In this psychologically dominated state, Logan purchased the GPS tracker and attached it to Emma's vehicle with the intent of knowing exactly where she went and who she met. Logan described how, over several consecutive days before Emma's disappearance, he used the tracking device to monitor her travel schedule from her commute routes to the time she left work, and this led him to realize that Emma frequently changed her route home, though in reality, investigative data showed this only occurred on the day she vanished. On the evening of October 12, 2008, when he saw the GPS signal indicate Emma had left work at her usual time, Logan started his pickup truck and followed from a distance. He stated that he approached Emma's vehicle as she turned onto the road along the park, at a low-light, low-traffic location. Logan described the initial plan as not to harm her, but to talk things out. But when Emma realized his truck was tailing her, she accelerated and then stopped in a clearing near the entrance to Lake Dardanelle State Park. Logan pulled up right behind her. At this point, according to Logan's statement, the situation quickly escalated. Emma stepped out of her vehicle intending to leave the area, and when Logan tried to approach to demand an explanation, Emma resisted and shouted, leading to a brief struggle. Logan admitted using his hand to cover Emma's mouth to make her quiet, but she struggled fiercely, lost balance, and fell to the right side of the clearing, striking her head on a large tree root. Logan described that moment as a shock, because Emma became motionless after the fall and showed no response when he shook her. Later, forensic results confirmed that the impact force to the skull region matched this description, proving a genuine struggle occurred and caused fatal injury. Logan said he panicked and immediately called Mara using a burner phone they used for private exchanges to avoid Emma seeing his messages. In the short call, Logan said something big happened, and Mara replied that he couldn't just leave everything in the park. From here, Logan's statement placed Mara in a direct role in handling the aftermath. Logan stated that Mara arrived at the Illinois Bayou forest area in her own sedan about 40 minutes after Emma's death. Logan had dragged Emma's body to the forest edge, but lacked the strength to move it deeper. Mara was said to have suggested finding a more concealed location, the exact site excavated by the 2020 investigative team. Logan described how Mara brought an old dark-colored jacket to cover Emma's head and shoulders while dragging her to avoid leaving ground traces, consistent with the cross-woven polyester fabric sample found near the body. They dug a shallow grave using tools from Logan's vehicle, mainly a small shovel and metal bar, then placed the body inside, covered it with dry leaves, and filled in the dirt. Logan confirmed the burial occurred before 1 a.m., matching the state of decomposition and the position where the remains were found. After completing the concealment of the body, Logan said Mara took a short note from her jacket pocket that she intended to use for another plan. In the chaos, the paper fell and was blown away by the wind, explaining why the note fragment was found several meters from the body and why handwriting analysis matched the writing to Mara's. Logan also admitted that the 911 accusation call 2 days before the disappearance was made by Mara using the burner phone, with the purpose of laying groundwork to later frame Emma as involved in illegal activities. When cross-referencing Logan's provided statement with all evidence collected in 2020, Price noted that every element matched. The GPS tracker purchased by Logan appeared near the body. The fabric matched the jacket Mara had bought. The note fragment matched Mara's handwriting. Cell mapping for both Logan and Mara showed unusual movement during Emma's disappearance window. And the struggle location, Logan described perfectly aligned with the clearing terrain and the depression next to the tree root at the scene. This alignment reinforced the statement's credibility and allowed Price to reconstruct the full sequence of events logically. Emma was tracked via GPS, intercepted and subdued, died unintentionally during the struggle, then transported into the Illinois Bayou forest and buried by Logan with active assistance from Mara, who played the role of instigator, director, and subsequent cover-up participant. Immediately after Logan Reed provided his detailed statement confirming Mara Quinn's role in the preparation, assistance, and concealment of Emma Caldwell's death. Detective Rowan Price coordinated with U.S. Marshals and law enforcement agencies in Michigan to execute an arrest warrant for Mara, who had left Arkansas years earlier and was now living in Grand Rapids. Recognizing the severity of the case and the risk of Mara fleeing if she received any warning, federal forces carried out the arrest under a no-knock warrant to ensure the element of surprise. Mara was subdued right at the entrance to the apartment complex where she was staying, with no opportunity to access her phone or personal documents. After completing the arrest, the investigative team executed a court-authorized search of the apartment, focusing on items potentially related to Logan's statement and the chain of forensic evidence collected in 2020. In the bedroom, authorities seized a plastic box containing various old documents, including a 2008 notebook with handwriting matching the analyzed strokes on the note fragment found near Emma's body. Many pages contained notes about tracking journeys, recording shift end times, and scenarios for reporting to police, reinforcing the hypothesis that the pre-disappearance 911 call accusing Emma was part of a deliberate plan. In the closet drawer, the search team recovered a dark polyester jacket showing wear on the sleeves and a small tear on the hem, matching the exact location of the fiber sample collected from the scene near the body. The jacket was sealed for examination, particularly to compare residual microfibers with those recovered from the Illinois Bayou forest. In the vanity drawer, investigators found an old cosmetics box with remaining heavy shade foundation matching the product purchased per the 2008 receipt. Although the product had dried, the forensic team was still able to analyze its composition for comparison with chemical traces found on the fabric and other evidence. Additionally, in a small box shoved deep under the bed, Price discovered an old burner phone without a battery of the exact type used for the 911 accusation call against Emma. Although the device could not be powered on, the internal serial number matched the batch sold in the Russellville area that year, strengthening the link between Mara and the anonymous call. In the living room area, authorities seized a newer laptop that was synced with data from the 2007 laptop previously recovered by the Arkansas Digital Forensics Unit. Backups of old folders contained search histories related to tracking, location devices, and information identical to what had been extracted from the old computer, proving Mara had actively retained and continued updating the data even years after the incident. These documents directly supported proof of premeditation and orchestrator role. All seized evidence was categorized by relevance to Logan's statement: the jacket placed in the physical trace for comparison group, the burner phone in the device group, the cosmetics box and receipts in the preparatory behavior reinforcement group, the notebook and notes in the orchestrator documents group, holding particular value for building the prosecution file. When cross-referencing the evidence with Logan's statement, Price observed near-perfect alignment. Logan stated Mara brought the dark jacket to cover Emma's body. The jacket found matched the material and had corresponding tiers. Logan stated Mara planned the 911 call. The burner phone was found at her residence. Logan described Mara bringing the note in the night of aftermath handling. The notebook pages recovered matched the handwriting. Logan said Mara researched tracking and GPS information. Mara's computer history confirmed it. This consistency allowed Price to complete Mara's prosecution file under charges, including conspiracy to commit murder, aiding in concealment of a corpse, and obstruction of justice. All evidence was forwarded to the Pope County Prosecutor's Office, where the legal filing process began as soon as supplemental forensic reports were completed. With every key element in Logan's statement validated by evidence seized in Michigan, Mara officially became the co-orchestrator in the case, and the next step was to bring both before the law in a file reopened after 12 years buried beneath the Illinois Bayou forest soil. When the trial of Logan Reed and Mara Quinn began in late 2020, the Pope County courtroom was packed, including Emma Caldwell's family, media representatives, and many Russellville residents who had followed the disappearance case for over a decade. The prosecutor opened by systematically presenting the entire chain of forensic evidence that cracked the cold case, starting with the GPS tracker found near Emma's remains. A technical expert was called to the witness stand to describe the process of recovering the device's serial number, analyzing the oxidation layers, and ultimately successfully matching it to the purchase receipt in Logan Reed's name. In a steady and firm voice, the expert affirmed, this device could belong to no one else but the person named on the transaction, and there is no reasonable explanation for it to appear next to the body, except that it was used to track the victim. Next, the fiber forensic evidence was presented. The lab technician described using FTIR to analyze the cross-woven polyester fiber composition and comparing it to the jacket recovered from Mara's residence in Michigan, showing that the fabric sample found near the body matched in fiber type, color, and weave pattern with the product Mara purchased in September 2008. Before the jury, microscopic images of the fibers were enlarged, with weave lines clearly matching the seized jacket sample, rendering the defense's random coincidence argument weak from the start. The next forensic evidence was handwriting analysis. A handwriting expert presented the analysis of stroke paths, pressure, and slant angles on the paper fragment found near the body, comparing it to Mara's samples from the 2008 notebook. The large screen behind displayed nearly identical hooked characters. Overlapping features exceeded 90%, a level considered very high probability of the same writer under U.S. handwriting examination standards. The final blow in the forensic chain came from cell mapping. A data expert explained to the jury the technology for reconstructing movement behavior via carrier logs, then displayed a map showing the 3 ping routes: Emma's, Logan's, and Mara's. Emma's phone moved toward the park area just as Logan's left his home coverage. At the same time, Mara's phone appeared briefly in an area near Logan's residence. The red light paths on the map formed an undeniable intersection pattern, proving the presence of all three devices in close proximity during the victim's disappearance window. After presenting the forensic chain, the prosecutor moved to the case-cracking timeline reconstruction, guiding the jury from 2008 to 2020, disappearance, stalled investigation, cold case status, remains discovery, new evidence re-examination, GPS data linkage, fiber trace comparison, handwriting analysis, to cell mapping, identifying intersection points. The long timeline was displayed in clear stages, logically matching step by step, showing the case was not a series of guesses, but the result of advancing technology and careful extraction and verification. The most critical highlight of the trial was Logan Reed's own testimony. In the solemn courtroom setting, Logan took the stand with a weary, resigned expression. He looked directly at the jury and described the full sequence as he had told Price, tracking Emma with GPS, tailing her vehicle that evening, the struggle that caused Emma's death, the call notifying Mara, and the burial process. But the part that silenced the room was when Logan described Mara's role, from planning the 911 call to create a damaging foundation against Emma, purchasing the dark jacket and cosmetics for concealment, to directly appearing at the Illinois Bayou forest and assisting in burying the body. Logan concluded his testimony with, "I am responsible for Emma's death, but I did not act alone." Mara's attorney immediately countered, attempting to undermine Logan's testimony value by arguing he was seeking leniency by shifting blame. They raised the possibility that Logan fabricated the story or that the forensic evidence was only indirectly related and did not prove Mara's presence at the scene. However, each argument was quickly dismantled by the prosecutor through the closed forensic chain. GPS belonged to Logan, fabric belonged to Mara's jacket, note matched Mara's handwriting, burner phone found at Mara's residence, and cell mapping showed Mara's device moved unusually at the critical time. Even when the defense tried to argue the jacket sample might not belong to Mara, the prosecutor countered with the purchase receipt, fiber photos, and FTIR results, rendering the rebuttal completely ineffective. During deliberations, the jury considered the entire evidence chain, not only as a murder, but as a deliberately planned scheme with clear division of roles between Logan and Mara. From forensics to witness testimony, from physical evidence to digital data, every element linked tightly and led to the same conclusion. Logan caused Emma's death, and Mara instigated, coordinated, and participated in the aftermath handling. After more than 4 hours of discussion, the jury returned to the courtroom, and the judge requested the verdict. In a solemn atmosphere, the jury foreman stood, looked directly at the court, and read the conclusion. "We find the defendant Logan Reed guilty of first-degree murder. We find the defendant Mara Quinn guilty of conspiracy to commit murder and concealing evidence." The gavel fell, ending a case that spanned 12 years and the final chapter of an investigative journey built on persistence, forensic progress, and the weight of truth. When the guilty verdict was announced at trial, the sentencing phase occurred just weeks later, marking the final step in an investigative journey lasting over 12 years. The Pope County Court fully considered Logan Reed's level of cooperation in solving the case, particularly his detailed statement that led investigators to positions perfectly matching the forensic evidence, and decided to apply a reduced sentencing framework compared to the maximum for first-degree murder. Logan was sentenced to 35 years imprisonment with no parole eligibility for the first 25 years, a sentence reflecting both the severity of the conduct and the value of his cooperation in bringing the full truth to light. Although Logan was the direct cause of Emma's death, the court emphasized that his truthful disclosure and accurate description of the scene, timing, and body concealment method helped crack the cold case file and provide answers to the victim's family. In contrast to Logan, Mara Quinn pleaded not guilty, offered no cooperation, and consistently denied any involvement, despite the forensic chain perfectly matching her actions. Therefore, the court applied the maximum penalty under the law for conspiracy to commit first-degree murder and serious evidence concealment. Mara was sentenced to life imprisonment without parole, a penalty reflecting her role in instigating the criminal behavior, creating the tracking plan, staging the 911 call, and directly participating in handling Emma's body. In the sentencing statement, The judge emphasized that Mara's orchestrating psychological structure was the factor that enabled the crime to occur and persist for many years. After the sentences were pronounced, the cold case unit officially closed the Emma Caldwell case file. All records were archived with a special notation, highlighting it as one of the most significant cold cases solved through modern forensics, combined with re-evaluation of old file data. In the internal summary report, Detective Rowan Price and the investigative team identified 4 pivotal factors that completely changed the case outcome. First was the discovery of Emma's remains after the heavy rain in 2020. The turning point that opened a new crime scene, provided legal basis to reclassify from missing person to homicide, and yielded evidence absent from the original investigation. Second was the GPS tracker. The device, once deemed unrelated in 2008, became the most critical evidence when 2020 forensics recovered the serial and traced the purchaser. From the GPS tracker, the logical chain led directly to Logan and the purpose of tracking Emma before her disappearance. Third was cell mapping, a tool not available at the detailed level in 2008, but decisive in 2020, enabling minute-by-minute reconstruction of Emma's, Logan's, and Mara's movements, thereby proving their original statements inconsistent with real data. Fourth was Logan's statement. After confrontation with the complete forensic chain, his account matched every detail of collected evidence, from the struggle location, body transport method, to Mara's role in preparation and concealment steps. This exact match created a closed evidence loop that no defense argument from Mara's attorney could break. In the final summary, Price wrote, "This case demonstrates that forensics is not just technology, but a bridge between truth and time. Every seemingly disconnected piece of evidence, the forgotten GPS, the dark fabric fragment, the blurred handwriting on decayed paper, the faint 2008 signal logs, became crucial pieces when viewed through present-day eyes. The Emma Caldwell case file was closed with the status solved, conviction, ending a journey from disappearance, stalemate, cold case to resolution." In the report's closing section, the cold case unit noted that the case succeeded not only through technical advances, but also through persistent re-examination of every seemingly unimportant element. With sentences handed to Logan and Mara, the Arkansas justice system affirmed that time may bury traces, but it cannot bury accountability, and truth, even after 12 years, can still be pulled from the damp soil of the Illinois Bayou forest to stand before justice. The story of the Emma Caldwell case, a 2008 missing person file, only resolved in 2020 thanks to forensic digital advances and investigative persistence, reflects very real issues in contemporary American life. Violence in personal relationships, sophisticated psychological manipulation, abuse of technology for tracking others, and serious mistakes that arise when communities or law enforcement fail to heed warning signs. Logan attached a GPS tracker to Emma's vehicle, an act many might view as control or tracking out of concern, but in reality, it was a violation of privacy and often a clear sign of psychological and physical abuse. Mara staged the 911 call, deliberately creating a negative image of Emma, a reminder that violence doesn't only come from fists or weapons, it can come from fabrications, mental manipulation plans, and quiet efforts to undermine someone's credibility. Emma's death did not stem from a sophisticated murder plot, but from a struggle leading to injury, making the story all the more relatable and thought-provoking. Tragedy can begin from actions that seem just wanting to talk or just wanting a little control, but with instigation from an orchestrator like Mara, the consequences become irreversible. The real-world lesson for us today is this: any sign of tracking, control, or psychological violence in a relationship must be taken seriously. Modern technology can protect victims, like cell mapping or forensics, but is also being used by wrongdoers to track, manipulate, and harm. Remember that when someone tries to control your movements, devices, relationships, or reputation, it is not love or concern, but a sign of danger. And just as in Emma's case, if loved ones sense something not right, report it immediately to authorities. Delay can sometimes be the difference between safety and tragedy. Thank you for joining us on this journey to uncover the truth of a case that seemed destined to fade into oblivion for over 12 years. Subscribe to the channel so you don't miss the next stories, where justice, truth, and real-life lessons are always brought to light.